If you're not constantly attempting to prove yourself, you're a lazy fuck. Anyways, now that I've got your attention, you're not. And I want you guys to get to know me a little bit more as Sage in Spirit. Because I am somebody who helps in trauma healing, I've gotten a lot of comments and messages, basically people saying, oh, because you're a spiritual teacher, that must mean that you're 100% healed. And I think that this is a very common misconception, especially within the spiritual community, that if you do X, Y, and Z, that gives you the result or the outcome of being an entirely healed individual. And I would love to counter that with something that's even more controversial and say that I don't believe that there's such thing as being 100% healed. Not at all. And at the end of the day, all of this is the reworking of your mind, the deprogramming, and the alchemization of wisdom and knowledge in order to retrain the brain to get a more desired outcome and effect on your life so that you can retell your story. So my own program, the number one thing that I have always struggled with since childhood, and especially going through various forms of abuse as a child, and then getting into various relationships, romantic relationships as a very young adult, have been my biggest struggle. And I'll go a little bit in depth and see if you resonate. There's always been this overwhelming theme, thought, programming within my subconscious that if I'm not constantly doing something either around the house or for other people, that I am completely useless, worthless, and carry no value, and that I don't deserve X, Y, and Z good things to transpire in my life or to be gifted with something in return. Now, while that may seem very silly to a lot of you, it's a very real problem that I think a majority of people, even not within the spiritual community, struggle with. And that can play off a lot of emotion, though that's what can cause depression and anxiety, is when you don't know who you are, because that's an element of not knowing who you are. That's a direct attack on the root chakra, which is our knowing of self and our sense of self-security, because you cannot have that if that is completely disabled and you don't know who you are. So for a majority of my life, I've been lied to by family members. I did not know what reality was. I did not know that when I'm an adult, I was allowed or am allowed to make my own decisions that are not influenced by certain members of my family, specifically within the matriarchal element of my family. And that shit cuts deep for a young lady. So this is something that I still struggle with in my mid-20s, and it's not as bad as it was a few years ago, but I am here to say that I am still finding my sense of self, and I am in a much better place mentally than I was even just a year ago, which is crazy to even look back on because it seems so vulnerable to the world, and it was most definitely sad. So I'll give you the secret, the best way to deprogram that away from the mind, and especially out of your subconscious, because ultimately your subconscious determines your manifestation that you're claiming to want. So anything to do with the root, solar, or sacral chakra, which all govern our sense of self, our ultimate happiness, confidence, etc., you must get to work, literally. And that work is what serves you and you alone, nobody else. Where can you start? Well, what is one of your main interests? To me, one of my main interests was starting a business. So I finally decided to literally jump off the fucking cloud of fear that I had. And I just started because I know what I'm good at. But it took me a long time to realize this is something that I can monetize, but aside from money, it's a genuine passion that I have that's gotten other people results for literally my whole existence, even when I was a kid. Me doing this work and hitting the books, because we have learned, if you've been around here for a while, that for every business book we read a spiritual book. For every spiritual book we read a business book. Because you cannot have the yin without the yang. If you also remember me talking about the yin and the yang and the whole collection of acquiring knowledge and wisdom and all this stuff with the books, you'll also remember that we talked about what happens is the synchronicities that you start to notice. When God's source universe sees you investing in yourself and yourself alone, the numbers start happening, the repeating numbers. And for me, mine is 1144. For me, that means that I am on the right track and that I am serving my highest timeline, my highest good for the betterment of humanity, my contribution to this world, if you will. And what does this do? This brings me happiness. This brings me joy. And when you follow your joy, you find success. You find your ultimate happiness. You gain confidence and a positive self-esteem through that. Biggest life changer you will ever experience in your life. But here's the thing. Sliding into that will probably be the most uncomfortable shit you have ever gone through in your entire life. Because it's unknown territory. It's something that you've never done. Even just the prioritizing yourself and your brain, prioritizing your mental health and doing something that's forward thinking, forward stepping, jumping off that cloud, it's a big thing. And yes, it can be a big risk. But what is life without risk? Every millionaire that you've ever seen, anybody that's living a better lifestyle that you enjoy seeing or wish to attain, was acquired because they took a risk. Somewhere, somehow, they had to gain knowledge. They had to input instead of outputting in a selfish way. They stopped doom scrolling. They stopped all the unhealthy habits and rituals that they had in their life. Because in order to break a pattern, in order to break a cycle, you have to retrain the subconscious. And that's exactly how you do it. So, 1, retrain the subconscious. We're not doing the whole affirmation bullshit, but you do need to tell yourself on a daily basis, multiple times a day, that you are worthy, you are loved, you are free to do all that you please, and that it's okay to take a risk. Figure out what the fuck the first risk will be that you choose to take. Figure out what your hobby, your passion, your desire is. Figure out what your desired life is, lifestyle is. And then you need to just do it. You need to do the things that bring you joy. It sounds stupid, it sounds far too simple, but that's also a part of the trauma, is in having to overprove ourselves as kids. You get into adulthood and you try to overcomplicate anything and everything because you think that's the right thing to do. When in reality, you've just burnt the absolute fuck out of yourself. And nothing's happened. Nothing great has improved within your life. So basically do the complete opposite of whatever the fuck it is that you've been doing. August 8th. See you in class. Okay, love you. Bye.